Okay, good evening everyone. Good evening, welcome. Can we start? Am I audible? Okay, can I start? Done. So next concept that we'll be discussing is the idea of a NIMZ, National Investment and Manufacturing Zone. But before I start, please listen to a condition here, right? Basically an update. There are no functional NIMZs in India. It is just a proposal. Is it okay? There are no NIMZs which are actually working in India. These are just proposal. Very old proposal, but for various reasons, no NIMZs have been established. None of them are working. So if you ask me, sir, how many NIMs are there in India? No answer to that. If you ask me what has been the performance of NIMZ, again, no answer to that. So it is a proposal. I'll just tell you what was proposed by the government, understand and go forward. Okay, now, right, what is this NIMZ? First one, NIMZs will be developed as industrial towns, right? Industrial towns means what? There are industries, right? For example, you must have heard of many industries where, let's say, steel plants are set up. Right? Many of these industrial towns, right, where steel plants are set up, and basically around the steel plant, lot of other industries will grow, and a town will also basically grow. So one NIMZ will be developed as a township, and industrial towns are those where the economy, right, economy in those cities are built around an industry. Okay, so that's the first point. Second, NIMZs will be involved in the export of goods and services, will have multiple industrial parks, will have export oriented units, will have multiple SEZs. Just a proposal. Don't worry, right? If you ask me, sir, any NIMZ, there is absolutely no NIMZ which is working as of now. Second one, for the purpose of governing the NIMZ, governing means what? An area will be established, a town will be established. Now we should have certain structure to manage the town. We should have something, some authority should be there to manage the town. In the context of the National Investment and Manufacturing Zone, the proposal was there to set up a special purpose vehicle. Okay, we should have a special purpose vehicle. What is a special purpose vehicle? One authority. Authority will be established, authority will be set up. The function of the authority will be to look after the industrial town here, right? So first, it will be developed as an industrial township. Second, NIMZ sizes will be very large, and within the NIMZs, multiple SEZs would be there, multiple industrial areas would be there, right? Multiple export promotion units would be there, etc. And the third one, for the management of the NIMZ, we will have one authority, special purpose vehicle. And the role of the special purpose vehicle is just to manage, right, the industrial town here. Next one, at least 30% of the area, right, at least 30% of the area that we are covering in NIMZ, that we have under NIMZ, at least 30% of this area will be reserved only to promote manufacturing, right? That is, let's say 5,000 hectares of areas covered for NIMZ. Out of that, 30% we will reserve it, and in these 30% of the area, only manufacturing units would be established, right? What is the reason? Basically, in order to promote manufacturing sector. Sir, what is SEZ? SEZ basically stands for Special Economic Zone. Right? Before the break itself, we finished SEZ and we are continuing from there. Next one, state government may also promote MSMEs. Right? MSME policy can be implemented in this NIMZ to promote, right, the MSMEs. NIMZs will be focused in usage of clean energy, NIMZs will be focused on the technology which is energy efficient. That is, in simple terms, we are trying to use any kind of technology that is available which will not be causing lot of pollution, which will be using the energy much more efficiently. That is a basic idea. And within the NIMZ, we will also have skill development facilities so that people, that is the workers, will be able to get access to certain skilling, and rather than working at one level, now they'll be able to move up in the ladder. That is, higher the skill set you have, more absorption, or at higher level, now you will be absorbed. Right? That is a basic idea for NIMZ. Now again, has it been implemented? Has it worked efficiently, etc., etc.? I don't have an answer to that. Why? Because as of now, there is no functional NIMZ that is operating. And because there is no functional NIMZ, more than 20 have been proposed, but none of them are working as of now. Right? So understand the logic here. And one more point I just want to mention regarding NIMZ is, for special economic zones, government introduced a law. Right? SEZ bill was introduced and SEZ Act was passed, and as a result of this, we have SEZs. What is the origin of NIMZ? Will the government bring in a bill to promote NIMZ? No. As of now, remember this, government announced a policy called as National Manufacturing Policy. Government in 2011 announced a policy by the name of National Manufacturing Policy, NMP, National Manufacturing Policy. Under the National Manufacturing Policy of 2011, government proposed NIMZ. Is it okay? Let me know if you have a problem with this. For special economic zones, government passed a bill. SEZ Act of 2005 was implemented, so we are allowed to set up special economic zones. Whereas in the context of NIMZs, there is no law, there is no bill, etc. Government has announced a policy back in 2011 as a part of the manufacturing policy. Now we want to set up national investment and manufacturing zones. Done. So these are the various features which are proposed by the government. Right? These are the features that are proposed by the government for NIMZs. Right? Not yet set up, no functional NIMZs are there. Done. So the last policy, the last type of investment model that you need to understand is the concept of public-private partnership, PPP, public-private partnership. Right? The concept of PPP. Very often we have used the term PPP. For example, last week when I was discussing agriculture sector, I've given you one concept of silo storage. This is how you keep on connecting the dots. We have discussed one reform of silo storage. And while discussing the silo storage facilities, I told you that Government of India is promoting silos development through public-private partnerships, PPPs or public-private partnerships. That is one connection. Second connection, we have discussed NMP, right? That is National Monetization Pipeline. Even under National Monetization Pipeline, I told you certain assets will be leased out to private sector. Simple. Certain assets will be leased out to private sector. It is also a type of a PPP itself, public-private partnership. Okay, now let me start. What is the idea of a public-private partnership here? Whenever you come across the term public-private partnership, it refers to two parties, that is the government as well as the private sector coming together, signing one agreement, and as per the agreement, there will be either a goods provided or a service provided or a construction done. Simple. What do you mean by public-private partnership? The private sector as well as the government coming together, signing an agreement, and as per the agreement, the private sector will either provide, right, certain services, provide certain goods, or let's say develop and maintain certain infrastructure. Now it will vary from one project to another project, right? I hope you understand this. What kind of agreements are signed, it will vary from one project to another project. For example, Imagine a road is there. Road is already there. Is it okay? Can I call this as a brownfield project? Let me know. A road is there, let's say a national highway. It's already there, by the way. Can I call this as a brownfield project? Yes. Can we have a PPP here? Of course, yes. That is, let's say a national highway is there. Private sector, the company in the private sector now will be asked to maintain the road. They will be asked to maintain the road, let's say for 20 years. And because they are spending money, they are maintaining the road, they will be allowed to, right, collect a toll. They will be allowed to collect tolls, let's say for 20 years. And after 20 years is over, they'll be transferring the ownership again back to government. And moreover, please understand this. First and foremost, if I use the term transferring ownership, that is wrong. Ownership is always with the government. The right to collect a toll is there for 20 years with the private sector. And after 20 years is over, even this right will be given back to government. Right? This is one type of a public-private partnership. One type. Another type of a public-private partnership, let's say there is no road. There is absolutely no road. Now, imagine I'm the government, you are the private sector company. Both of us will sign the agreement. You will simply construct the road. Understand this. You will simply construct the road. I will pay money to you. You will hand over the road to me. This is one more type of a public-private partnership. Any difficulty, please do let me know. Don't say both are one and the same. Absolutely no. In the example one, it's a brownfield project. Right? You don't have to develop the project. It is already there. You need to simply maintain, provide services, collect tolls for certain number of years. Whereas in the second example, it is a greenfield project. Infrastructure was not there. You basically developed the infrastructure. I paid money to you. You handed over the infrastructure. That's a second type. Can I give you a third example here? Right? Can I give you a third example? Basically a combination of both. That is, it's a greenfield project. I will ask you to construct a road. I will not pay any money to you. Rather, I will say, because you have spent money to construct the road, for next 15 years, you impose and collect tolls. For next 15 years, you only impose, you collect the tolls, and after 15 years, transfer the road to me. Right? So all these examples, I've given you 3 examples now. I've given you 3 examples. All these 3 examples, right, are basically a type of public-private partnership itself. So second one is not clear. Second one, you will develop the road, I will pay money to you. It is as good as you are giving me a product, I will give money. Right? Imagine 100-kilometer stretch of national highway. You will construct the 100-kilometer highway. I will pay money. That's it. Right? That is the basic idea of a second example. Right? So all the 3 examples that I've given just now, all these are basically examples of public-private partnership. Done? So both, that is the government as well as the private sector, because please understand this. Traditionally, when you look at it traditionally, whenever you talk about PPP, there are 2 parties in the agreement. One of the parties is private sector, another party is government. You'll understand why I'm focusing on this after some time. I'll repeat it again. Whenever you look at the concept of a PPP in a traditional sense, there are 2 parties involved. One party, that is, one side is government, another side has to be private sector. Now, both the parties are entering into legally binding agreement. This agreement is called as concessionaire agreement. Now, why do we promote PPPs? Especially in the last 2 decades, in case of India, even now government of India is promoting PPP. Why? The government says, one, government of India will not have all the money to develop infrastructure. Simple. Government doesn't have all the money to develop infrastructure. For example, you need to develop or construct a 100-kilometer stretch of a national highway. Right? You will have to spend a lot of money. But government may not have all that money. So what they will do? They will simply ask the private sector to spend, and for a certain number of years, they will be asked to collect tolls. So government is not spending money, but the infrastructure will be developed. Right? So that is one reason. Second reason, between the government as well as the private sector, it is always a private sector which is efficient in construction of infrastructure. Is it okay? I'll repeat it again. When you compare between the government as well as the private sector, it is the private sector which is considered to be much more efficient in terms of developing infrastructure. So government says, I will ask the private sector itself to develop the infrastructure. Right, sir, but in all the cases, development may not be required. I'll give you one more situation. Government will provide you services. Private sector will provide you services. Who do you think will provide you better quality of services? Right, and there are hundreds of examples right in front of your eyes. Right, government is providing services. Private sector will also provide you the services. Who is going to provide you better services? Private sector. So government says, if private sector is better in providing services, I will ask the private sector to do it. Right, and what I'll do? Right, I'll take a simple example, airport. Right, I'll take a simple example, airport. Airport is developed, greenfield project is developed. Government can maintain the airport. Right, that is Airport Authority of India, which is basically under the Ministry of Civil Aviation. They can maintain, operate the airport, provide services to all the customers, generate revenue. But why? Private sector is there. Many private sector companies are there. We'll simply hand over the airport to them, let's say for 20 years. Let them generate revenues, but let them share certain amount of money with me. Can I give you examples? Adani, GMR company, right? There are many of these kind of companies, right? Many of these kind of companies which are allowed to operate airport for certain number of years, generate revenues, but pay a certain amount of money to government of India. That is again because private sector is expected to provide better services. Government will enter into PPP. So both the private sector can utilize the resources efficiently. Government doesn't have all the money to develop the infrastructure, so they will ask private sector to spend money, develop infrastructure in a greenfield project. In a brownfield project, private sector can provide better resources. Government will hand it over and collect a certain amount of monies from the private sector. So these are certain very important reasons why governments generally promote the model of the public-private partnership. That is the model of PPP, public-private partnership. Now, what are the different types of models, right? What kind of model can be used under the PPP? I'll give you 4 to 5 examples, but as far as I'm concerned, UPSC doesn't ask you this. They will not ask you this. Why? I'll tell you. It is an evolution, right? Basically, if you look at the IMF paper, right? IMF has published paper on PPP. World Bank has published a paper on PPP. There are more than 20 types of models which you can use in the PPP. But do you need to study all the 20 types for UPSC? My answer is absolutely no. It is not at all needed. Focus on the basic ones, more than sufficient. Let's start. First one is build, operate, transfer. BOT, build, operate, transfer. What happens in a build, operate, transfer? Same example. I will ask you to construct a road, maintain the road for 15 years, and after 15 years, transfer the road to me. Is it okay? Let me know. Right? I will ask you to construct a road, right? And operate the road, maintain the road for next 15 years. You collect tolls. And after 15 years is over, simply hand it over to me. Build, operate, and transfer. First one. Second one, lease, develop, operate. lease, develop, operate. Right? Understand in case of lease, develop, operate. Imagine there is an infrastructure. Right? The infrastructure is already there. Government will hand it over for, let's say, 20 years or 30 years to private sector. Private sector will operate the complete infrastructure, and after 30 years is over, hand it over to government. Simply transfer it to government. Right? Lease, develop, operate. Right? So that is one type of the PPP. Third one, service contract. Third one is a service contract. I'll give a simple example. Just apply the logic here. All of you have traveled by metro train. Bullet train is yet to start, but I'll take an example of metro. Metro train. Now, is it okay if I say metro train is basically a collection of multiple services? Understand my logic here. What is a metro train? Right? You will travel by a metro train, but if you want to go from a station A to station B, in a metro train, there are so many services that you are supposed to use. Sir, what do you mean by that? You will have to go to the metro station first. Security check will be there. Then you will have to go to the ticket counter. Right? Somebody will be providing you the ticket or token. Now you will go to the platform. Right? Again, there is security services. Now the metro train will come. Right? There is a driver, right, or a conductor who is operating the metro train. Right? Is it okay if I say there are multiple services that are there when you are operating only one project, that is metro train? Now, what if I take only one of these services, give it to private sector? Understand this. What if I take one of these services and give it to private sector? That is, only part of the services will be outsourced. Only providing certain services will be outsourced to private sector players. Right? That is basically the idea of a service contract. For example, I can outsource, let's say, security services. I can outsource cleaning services. I can outsource, right, let's say, conductor services, etc. Right? It is basically the idea of a service contract. And finally, hybrid annuity model, HAM, hybrid annuity model. Right? A very, very novel type in case of India. Understand this carefully. Let me go step by step. Under the hybrid annuity model, there are two components here. Right? The first word is hybrid. Second one is annuity. Now, what is this idea of a hybrid annuity model? Let's say I will ask you how much money do you require to develop a particular road. Understand this. Right? What is the total project cost for developing a road? And is it okay if I say total project cost? Whenever you tell me how much money you require to develop this road, obviously it's inclusive of your profit margins, because many students will keep on asking me after I explain this. If I ask you, let's say, at what price you want to sell this bottle to me, will you include the profit and tell me, or will you exclude the profit and tell me? Right? It's as simple as that. Right? So first, step number one, what is the total project cost? Right? What is the TPC? Total project cost for a project. Right? Let's say hypothetically, it's 100 crore rupees. Just take simple numbers. Let's say hypothetically, it's 100 crore rupees. Now what I'll do is, okay, out of 100 crore rupees, in the first 5 years, I will give you 40% of this. Is it okay? In the first 5 years, I will give you 40% of it. And remaining 60% you invest. Understand this carefully. In the first 5 years, I will give you 40% of it, and remaining 60% you invest. And you develop the project, hand over the project to me. That is, let's say, road. Now what I'll do? I will start operating the road. That is, I will start collecting the tolls over the road. The right of toll collection is not given to private sector. I will do that. Right? You have developed the road, give the road to me. It's my duty to collect the toll. Now what will happen? After you have transferred, after you have given the project to me, annually, right, understand this, annually I will start making payments to you. Annually I will start making payments to you. Again, I will repay this particular 60% along with inflation adjustment, along with adjusting with inflation. You don't get into the calculation of inflation adjustment, you don't worry. Understand the logic here. What is happening in a hybrid annuity model? In case of a hybrid annuity model, certain amount of fixed amount of payment, that is 40% of the project cost, is given by the government to private sector, that is a private developer, in the first 5 years. Remaining 60%, the private sector developer will invest from his pocket. Government says, even this particular 60% that you have invested, the 60% that you have put in, I will return it back to you. Right? Later, I will return it back to you in the form of annual payments. I will even adjust the amount. Right? Because from 1 year to next year, obviously there is inflation rate. I will even adjust the amount and I'll make the payment back to you. This model is referred to as hybrid annuity model. Right? Very, very famous now. In which sector are we using the hybrid annuity model? We are using the hybrid annuity model in the road sector. Right? Majorly, we are using the hybrid annuity model in the road sector. Right? This is basically one more type of a PPP model that we are using right now. Now, I've used the term here. It is a mix of EPC and BOT. What is BOT? Build, operate, transfer. Right? BOT means build, operate, transfer. I have written one more term here. Engineering, procurement, construction. EPC stands for engineering, procurement, construction. The basic idea for build, operate, transfer is what? You construct the road, you transfer the road after certain number of years, right? That is a build, operate, transfer. Right? What is EPC? Right? What is EPC? You construct the road, you hand over the road to me, I'll make payment to you. Don't say both are one and the same. Understand the differences here. I'll repeat it again. EPC, you construct the road, you give the road to me, I'll make a payment to you. Build, operate, transfer. You construct the road, you operate the road for 15 years, you collect the tolls, after 15 years, you transfer the project to me. Right? So some of the features of BOT are taken here, some of the features of EPC are taken here. This model is called as hybrid annuity model. HAM, hybrid annuity model. Sir, why will someone pay first although toll collection is also given to government? My dear, understand the objective here. The government says, whatever you have invested, I will pay it back. By the way, interest is paid. Right? That is inflation adjustment. Interest is paid to you. Right? You have invested money. You are getting it back along with interest. That is basically the idea here in hybrid annuity model. If you don't want to participate, don't participate. It's very simple. Right? Because please understand all the road projects, because you are under the assumption that all the road projects where you have invested will always fetch returns to you. Absolutely no guarantee. Trust me on this. Absolutely no guarantees on it. Why? Can I give you a very simple example? Imagine you constructed the road. You constructed the road. Don't you think the amount of tolls that you are going to receive is dependent on number of vehicles which are going to use the road? Think of it. You have constructed the road. The number of vehicles that will use the road will determine how much toll you are going to get. Now, what if I were to say, imagine A and B. there is a road connectivity. Lot of vehicles are plying, lot of cars are there, lot of this is there, etc. But what if I say later, after 1 year that you have constructed the road, government will start fast railway services between these two cities. Right? Vande Bharat has been started. Right? You understand now. Right? Vande Bharat project has been launched between these two cities. Now tell me, will the decision of the government, will it have an impact on your revenues or not? Right? I hope you understand. Will the decision of the government to start, let's say, fast railway services between these two cities, will it have an impact on your revenues or not? Of course, the answer is yes. Right? No one has replied, but I will reply to myself. Answer is yes. Why? If the travel time is going to come down, right, through Vande Bharat railways, then tell me, rather than traveling by road, don't you think most of the people will switch over to railway mode of transportation? And if people will start switching over to the railways, number of cars which are going to go on this road will automatically come down. And when the number of cars will go down, what about your revenues? You have invested money. Will you be able to collect, right, let's say a certain amount of returns because of this? Absolutely not. So that's the reason. Please remember this. There are so many factors. There are so many factors that will have an impact on your expenditure as well as returns. I'll give you one more example. Imagine you have signed an agreement with Government of India. You have invested money. Pandemic happened. Government imposed a lockdown. Now tell me what will happen to your cost of labor? What will happen to the transportation of raw materials, etc.? Don't you think all of them will automatically go up? When it goes up, the cost of the project will go up, right? And even if you earn, let's say, until now your calculation was like this: I will spend 60, I will get 100, so 40 is my profit. But because of the lockdown, cost of transportation goes up, cost of labor goes up because labor is not available. Rather than earning 60, what if you earn 90? I'm sorry, what if your expenditure is 90 now? Forget about your earnings. Don't you think here itself, right, there's a problem for your revenues? Right? So that's the reason I'm saying these are proposals. There is a lot of risk for all of the proposals. It's not that one of the proposal is safest, no risk is there, etc., etc. Absolutely no. Every proposal has its own type of a risk. Done? Okay. Let me go to the issues related to PPP, public-private partnership. What are the issues? First one, getting access to long-term financing is a problem. This is a problem everywhere. If you're talking about infrastructure, access to long-term loans should be a problem for you, right? So first, getting access to long-term loans is a problem in India. A problem in the sense what? Right? Unlike, let's say, Western markets, we do not have specialized institutions which will provide long-term infrastructure loans. Earlier weeks, we have discussed a concept called as NABFID, National Bank for Financing Infrastructure Development. What was the specialty? Right? What is the specialty about NABFID? They will give you large value loans and long-term loans. Right? So we are basically lagging behind these kind of institutions. So getting access to these kind of large value loans is a problem in India. Second one, currently whatever agreements are signed under PPP, whatever agreements are signed, these are focused on the profits, not on the quality of services. This is a concern as a customer. This is a problem as a customer here. Most of the times, whenever such agreements are signed, government basically wants to sign the agreement because they want the private sector to invest. Private sector is signing the agreement because they are looking at profits. What about the quality of services? I hope you understand this. The agreements generally focus on profitability, financial aspect of the project, not about the quality of the services that the project would provide. right? So existing contracts generally focus on the financial aspect of it, not the quality side of the project. Third one, these are long-term projects. Understand this. These are long-term projects. And whenever you sign these long-term projects, there are so many events that will have a huge impact on private sector earnings. These events could be external in nature, internal in nature. But when you sign the agreement, it simply means if negotiations are not allowed later, if renegotiations are not allowed, then simply means the private sector will end up losing bargaining power. Right? What do you mean by this? I'll give a very simple example. Have a look at this. I'll take the same example. Imagine there is a private sector developer. Agreement has been signed. Now this national highway which connects A and B will be developed by the private company, maintained, operated by the private company, and toll for next 15 years will be collected by the private company. So is it okay if I say this project is of a duration 15 years? What is the tenure of this project for the private sector company? 15 years. For 15 years, they will have to maintain the road, collect the revenues. But what if after 5 years or after 7 years, government will propose a Vande Bharat project between A and B? Will it not have an impact on the revenue position of the private sector company? But you have signed the agreement, right? So understand the logic here. Whenever these are long-term infrastructure projects or long-term projects, the private sector company should be given the option for renegotiations. Over a period of time, renegotiations must be conducted. Does government promote it? Does government encourage renegotiations? No. Government says, I hope you understand, government says, once you have signed the agreement, that's it. That agreement duration, we will not renegotiate. Only in extreme certain circumstances, generally government agrees. But is it okay if I say, there are so many external events as well as internal events, there should be scope for renegotiations always. I hope you understand. There are so many factors which are beyond the control of the private sector. Because the private sector has invested money. Let's say there is one more wave of pandemic. Do you think private sector can control it? But if there is one more wave of the pandemic, lockdowns are imposed, cars are not going to use the national highways, and the private developer who has invested thousands of crores of money will not be able to collect any amount of revenue. Right? So in that case, what should be there? Right? There should be always a scope of renegotiation. Certain bargaining power should always be there for private sector. Right? There are issues with land acquisition. As usual, throw the term land acquisition under the infrastructure projects. Next one, issues related to government clearances. That is, let's say government has agreed, I'll be allowed to develop, let's say, a particular project. But one of the ministry within the government is not giving me final approval. Right? They are saying the project runs through an ecologically sensitive area. The project is crossing, let's say, certain biosphere reserve, etc., etc. Again, don't worry. Argument is, what if some of the ministries, or else, I'll give you one more example. The finance ministry is not giving approval because one of my investor is from China. Right? All of you will understand it very quickly. Right? So there are multiple situations wherein I could invest, prepare the project. I've already started acquiring the land, but one of the ministry has raised a certain concern. The approvals have been stopped, etc. Right? That will also cause a lot of issues in terms of construction and completion of the project. Okay? Right? Now, what are the other issues? Private sector is generally not interested in all the projects. I hope you understand. You might ask me, sir, why? Why is the private sector not interested? Reason is very simple. Private sector will enter into only those sectors, enter into PPP projects there, where they find potential of profit is very high. right, where they find their scope of operations, they have a lot of freedom, potential to generate revenues is very high. I'll give you a current affairs connection, follow this carefully. Even in case of railways, for the last 2 years, government is promoting private sector participation. Is it okay? Even in case of railways, government is promoting private sector participation. But very few routes, you will see private sector is operating trains. Right? Later when I discuss railways, I will not repeat it. Understand it now. Right? What I'm saying is, even in case of railways, what Government of India is saying, there are large number of routes. Private sector, if you want to operate means run the railways in these routes, I will allow you to do that. But very few of the private sector companies are actually interested in such railway projects. Why? Reason is simple. Railways, one, requires a lot of investment. Is it okay? Right? One of the issues here is investment requirement is very, very huge, because let's say a private sector wants to operate a train, they will have to borrow means lease the engine from someone else, and that is not cheaper, that is never cheaper. Right? Now they will have to decide how many times they will have to run, they will have to decide what should be the ticket prices, they don't have control over, right, the quality of the tracks, right, etc., etc. So you tell me, with so many variables, with so much of uncertainty, private sector will be very much interested in railway projects. Right? That's the reason a lot of the private sector companies even today have stayed away from participation in railways. But on the other hand, look at road projects. On the other hand, look at the road projects. Large number of PPP infrastructure projects are in roadways. Remember this. Next week I'll show you data. Don't worry. Large number of PPP infrastructure projects are in roadways. That is point one. And large number of PPP projects in India are implemented in the industrial states. That should not be surprising to you. Majority of these PPP infrastructure projects are in one, road projects. Second one, lot of them are implemented in states such as Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Gujarat, Maharashtra. If you ask me why, look at the industrial level in all these states, you will automatically understand. Right? So private sector is not interested in all the sectors, they are targeting specific sectors. The NPAs in the infrastructure projects have increased. Overall infrastructure NPAs are higher. Even in PPPs, NPAs have occurred. Right? There have been certain delays because of land acquisition issues, government clearance issues, etc. in developing of even the PPP infrastructure projects. Okay? Right? So these are some of the issues which are associated with public-private partnership projects in India. Okay. Now, what is the Kelkar committee? Government of India set up a committee which was headed by Mr. Vijay Kelkar. Okay. Government of India set up a committee which was headed by Mr. Vijay Kelkar, and very well known expert in India. Vijay Kelkar was also the head of or the chairman of Finance Commission, 14th Finance Commission. Right, so there was a committee which was set up by the government, Vijay Kelkar committee, and the committee has given certain recommendations. Let's have a look at these recommendations. One, the committee recommended that whenever you talk about PPP, whenever you use the term PPP, it should always be between the government as well as the private sector. Is it okay? I'll repeat it. Whenever you talk about PPP, right, it should be between the government as well as the private sector. Right? What should not happen is the state agencies or state-owned institutions should not be allowed to participate in the PPP. Right? What do you mean by this? Follow this carefully. Here is the central government. Imagine central government is asking a private sector to maintain and operate one airport. Is it okay? Here is the central government. It is asking the private sector company to maintain and operate one airport. Now, what generally has been observed is there are certain authorities which are owned by the state governments. Right? There are authorities which are owned by the state governments. Now, even these state government agencies want to participate, right, win the bid, that is win the project and maintain, operate the airport. Right? I hope you understand this. On one side, we have a central government. On the other side, we have institutions or agencies which are owned by the state government. Owned by state government. Now you tell me, is it PPP? Right? Can this be referred to as a PPP? Public-private partnership. Is it PPP? Right? Kelkar committee says no. And traditionally, no, this is not a PPP. When you say PPP, you need two parties. One the government and the other one is private sector. But what is happening here? One of the agencies owned by the state government wants to participate. They want to, right, be one of the parties in the PPP. Now, why? Why it should not be allowed? Right? Why private sector should be allowed? The argument is that if the state government owned agencies will start doing these commercial activities, don't you think the state government will be more focused on commercial activities rather than taking welfare of the people? Is it okay? I'll repeat it again. If the state government owned agencies now will start participating in the commercial activities, government will not be worried about social welfare. State government, they'll forget about healthcare, they'll forget about education. Why? They are able to earn money. The government is able to generate revenues in one more area. So obviously they will ignore other areas and they'll start focusing more and more on such activities. You want the government to work for commercial purposes. You want the government to work like a private sector company? No. That is the reason the state agencies should not be allowed to participate in the PPP. It should be government and private sector. Second, there are a lot of risks associated with infrastructure projects. For example, I told you some time ago, what if the government policies are changed? Right, sir, what do you mean by government policies? Vande Bharat train connecting two cities A and B. I've given you one example. Right? Labor policies of the government, labor policies are changed by the government. Importing of a machinery policy is changed by the government, etc. Now, whenever these kind of policies are changed by the government, don't you think private sector will face more risk in implementation of the project? What if, I'll give a very simple example. What if Government of India tomorrow brings out a policy and says, anybody who is hired in the construction of the road, they will have to be paid at least 500 rupees every day. Right? At least 500 rupees has to be paid to the every labor every day. This is a policy of the government. Now, don't you think if such policy is implemented by the government, right, the cost of the project automatically will increase? And when the cost of the project automatically increases, what will happen to your revenues? Right? The amount of profits that you are able to earn, they will start shrinking like this. So there is a concern there. Right? So whenever you talk about risk allocation, whenever you talk about, let's say, labor availability, imports, exchange rate, right, traffic on the road, right, certain risk is faced by the project. So there should be certain guidelines for distribution of the risk. Some of the risk should be given to the government, some of the risk should be given to private sector. Next one, we should have national level PPP policy. Simple, we don't have it. At the national level, we should have public-private partnership policies. Right? Central government should come out with a policy which is applicable to whole of India. right? That is one more recommendation. Discourage Swiss challenge model. I'll come to this, just give me some time. Protect the bargaining power of the private sector. Why? Right, go back to previous slide. I told you that generally these projects are long-term projects. Is it okay? These projects are long-term projects. And because these are long-term projects, over a period of time, there could be certain events, external, internal, etc., which will put a lot of pressure on the private sector. So private sector should be allowed to bargain again with the government. Right? So bargaining power should be given to private sector. Next, sector-specific regulators should be there in India. We do not have a sector-specific regulator for all the sectors. So what is the importance? I'll give a very simple example. Do we have a regulator for banking sector in India? Think of it and answer. And that's easy, very, very easy question, by the way. Do we have a regulator in the banking sector? RBI. Now, don't you think because RBI is there, any problem in the banking sector, any dispute in the banking sector, any bank is not performing correctly, RBI will come into picture. Right? In simple terms, whenever you have regulators for sectors like this, regulators will ensure that everybody who is participating in the sector will work according to the guidelines. Right? The burden on the government will not be there because RBI is there in the banking sector. Apply the same logic to all the other sectors. Is it okay? Right? Road sector, real estate. In fact, in real estate, we have a regulator now. Real estate regulatory authority is there. Right? So in the same way, what this committee says is, for every sector, we must have individual regulators, so that the regulators will mediate, regulators will ensure that any problem in the sector, it is resolved. Next one, frame guidelines for auditing the account books of the private sector. Right? What do you mean by auditing? Simple. Right? Imagine this is the agreement that both of us have signed. Okay, this is the agreement. One road is there. You have told me, right, time is how much? 6:30. You're the Prime Minister now. You have told me to operate the road for 10 years, right, and give you, let's say, 10% of revenues. Now tell me, how will you come to know how much is my revenue? I hope you understand this. We have entered into an agreement. It's a revenue sharing model. How will you come to know, right, what is my amount of revenue? What if I simply tell you 100 rupees my revenue? Will you agree to that? Right? What if I say my revenue is 150, my revenue is 200 rupees? There should be a mechanism, right? There should be a mechanism wherein you should be able to find out how much is my actual amount of revenue. That is the reason, have a look at this. Frame guidelines for auditing the account books of the private sector. Right now, you are not allowed to audit the accounts of private sector. I hope you understand. Don't say, sir, but we have Comptroller Auditor General. CAG cannot audit private sector. But you have entered into an agreement with me. I will have to pay you a certain amount of revenues. How will you find out? Am I giving you the right amount of revenues or not? So frame policies to audit my account books. Done. Last one, discourage Swiss challenge model. Discourage Swiss challenge model. Right? Swiss challenge model basically is referred to as unsolicited bid proposal. What do you mean by unsolicited bid proposal? I'll tell you the process. Follow this carefully. Imagine there is a private sector company. The private sector company will come out with a proposal to government. Right? Follow the process here. Right? The private sector will come to the government, submit a proposal to the government. For example, private sector will say, I will construct this road. I will construct the road. And annually, I will give you 10 crore rupees. So now understand this. Government has not called for any project. Government has not requested any proposals, but the private sector has come to the government, submitted the proposal. This is called as unsolicited proposal. Any difficulty here? This is referred to as unsolicited proposal. Now, should Government of India immediately agree to it? Right? Do you think that is rational? Private sector will come to you. They'll say, give me this project. I will construct the road. I will give you 10 crore. Right? How do you understand whether the proposal is correct or not? So what you will do? You will now accept the proposal. You have not given the right to private sector. You will basically say, okay, let me look at the proposal. You will accept the proposal. Now you will call for different proposals in the market. I hope you understand this. Now you will basically publish an advertisement and say, I want to construct a road between place A and place B. Is there anybody else in the market who want to construct it under this model? Right? That is, you will have to pay me certain amount of revenue. Is there anybody else in the market? Right? If there is anybody else in the market, they will also come out with a proposal. They will submit the proposal to you. Whichever is higher, you will allocate the project to them. This is called as a Swiss challenge model. This is referred to as Swiss challenge model. Any difficulty in understanding this? Please do let me know. Right? It is an unsolicited bid model. Unsolicited means government has not requested for any proposals. Private sector will approach the government, give the proposal. Then the government will basically start the process. Right? Government will ask for other proposals in the market. Whoever has bid the highest amount, they will allocate to that person. Right? This is a Swiss challenge model. Now, why does the Kelkar committee say don't promote it? Right? Why is the Kelkar committee saying, right, do not promote Swiss challenge model? Because the committee is concerned that this could lead to a lot of corruption in the system. Right? I hope you understand. This could lead to a lot of corruption in the system. So how corruption will, how it will lead to corruption in the system? Because let's say a private sector will approach you with a project. Now tell me on what basis they have prepared the report. Is it okay? Right? On what basis they have prepared that proposal? It simply means as from someone within the government itself, they have been able to get the lot of information. Certain sensitive information which is not available to public, they have access to that. Right? Which means, I'll use a technical term here, rather than using the term corruption in the system, the committee uses one more term. Have a look at this. The committee says, in order to prepare a proposal, the private sector company, that is the one who is giving the proposal here, will get access to information which is not accessible to others. That is, there is opaqueness in the government. Opaqueness means for some of them, access to information is there. For others, access to information is not there. So it could lead to a lot of corruption in the system. Do not promote Swiss challenge model. Right? So these are some of the recommendations of Kelkar committee. Right? This is basically the recommendation. Done? Shall I go forward now? Protect bargaining power of private sector. I'll repeat it again. Whenever you invest in infrastructure projects, that is, you enter into PPP, these are long-term projects. These are not short-term, these are long-term. And because you have entered into, let's say, a 10-year agreement, 15-year agreement, or 18-year agreement, over a period of time, there will be certain events which will have an impact on your revenues. So what we are saying is, protect the bargaining power of the private sector so that they can bargain again with the government. Okay, next one. Viability gap funding. VGF. Viability gap funding. Now, what is this idea for viability gap funding? Viability gap funding refers to assistance provided by the government, funding provided by the government in projects which are economically justified but lack financial viability. I'll explain this. Follow the discussion carefully. What is this viability gap funding? It is the funding. Funding means money, assistance. It is the funding that is provided by the government in those projects which are economically justified but lack financial viability. Right? What do you mean by that? Let me explain it. Follow this carefully. Imagine there are two places A and B, two cities A and B. Now, should we connect both of the cities A and B with a national highway? Is national highway good? Right? I hope you understand my statement. Should we construct more and more national highways in India? Of course, yes, national highways are good. They will connect, right, these cities. Transportation will become easier, right? The industrialization can also move out of the city, etc. Of course, road connectivity should be there, right? So this project, it is economically justified. Is it okay? This national highway project, it is economically justified. We should construct the project. But if I ask you to construct the project, if I ask you to construct the national highway, you are worried about revenues. You are worried, I'm telling you, right? I'll tell you, okay, construct the national highway and for 10 years, you collect the tolls. Don't give me anything. For 10 years, you collect the tolls. Now look at the concern here. Your concern is, sir, I will spend 100 crore rupees. I will construct the road. But what if I don't collect sufficient amount of tolls? What if number of vehicles on this road are very less? So there is a concern over financial viability of the project. Financial viability means, will it provide sufficient amount of revenues or not? So there are infrastructure projects which are required, which are economically justified, but there is a concern over viability, financial viability of the project. And in such projects, what government says is, I will provide certain funding to you. Certain amount of money I will give to you. Right? This funding is called as viability gap funding. And for PPP projects, for public-private partnership project, Government of India has launched VGF scheme. The idea of a VGF scheme was launched back in the year 2006. But very recently, this VGF scheme has been restructured, has been revamped. And now government basically under this new scheme divides all these infrastructure projects into two types. Don't worry, do not by heart the listing, not needed. Don't buy it, sir, which project will fall here, which project will fall here, not required. Understand the logic here. Government of India under the VGF scheme has divided these PPP infrastructure projects into two types, which will fall under subscheme 1 and remaining will be classified under subscheme 2. And what is the importance of classification like this? If a PPP project will fall under the subscheme 1, then up to 60% of the total project cost would be provided by the government. Up to 60%. Not exactly 60, up to 60. Right? Generally, the division is half of this, that is 30%, government will provide. Another 30%, let's say there is a ministry, there is an implementing agency, etc. They will provide remaining up to 30%. So up to 30% from the government, up to another 30% from the implementing agency, department or the ministry. So totally up to 60% of the project cost will be given by the government here. And if your project falls under the subscheme 2, second category, if the project falls under subscheme 2, up to 80% of the capex, capital expenditure, up to 80% of the capital expenditure, again 40% from the central government, 40% from, let's say, ministry or state government or nodal authority, etc., etc. So up to 40, totally up to 80% of the capital expenditure will be provided by the government. Why is the government of India doing all of this? Simple. Because government says we should develop these infrastructure projects. These are required. But there is a concern. Concern is that private sector is worried about returns. They're worried about viability of the project. Will they be able to earn sufficient rupees or not? So what I will do, out of the total expenses that they are incurring, some of it I will pay, right? So that these projects will be implemented. So this is basically the concept of viability gap funding or VGF. Done? Right, so these are the points I wanted to discuss in the context of investment models. Right, certain questions are there. We'll take up the questions later. Please don't worry. But if you do not have any questions, I'll go to the next part of the chapter or next chapter. Any doubts here? Please do let me know. Any doubts regarding whatever I've covered under the investment models? I've covered FDI, FPI, I've covered NIMZ, I've covered what is that? PPP, public-private partnership, right? And one more, I've covered special economic zones. What is a HAM? I'll repeat it. Under hybrid annuity model, whatever is the cost of the project, 40% of the cost of the project initially in the first 5 years is paid by the government. Remaining 60% is invested by the private sector. And government says actual cost is 100, but I am giving you 40 in the beginning, only 60 you are spending from your pocket. That 60 along with returns, I will pay it later. Is it okay? That 60 crore that you are spending along with returns, I'll pay it later. Right? That model is called as hybrid annuity model. Okay. Right? Can we go to the next one now? Concept of infrastructure. Sir, what is Swiss challenge model? I'll repeat it again. Follow this. In the Swiss challenge model, the private sector will approach the government with a proposal. Government has not asked for any projects. And the private sector will approach the government, submit a project report. Now, what the government will do? They will not allocate the project to this company. Now they will basically look at the project and ask for other proposals in the market. Right? Because the private sector is starting. It is the private sector which is initiating the process. It is called as unsolicited bid model or Swiss challenge model. When government pays back, what is inflation adjustment? That is from 1 year to next year. Obviously, the value of rupee will keep on falling. So government says, I will give you along with certain returns. That is the inflation adjustment that I've written here. In HAM, government or private sector will collect toll. It is generally the right of collection of tolls is given to government. Government will have the right to collect toll. But is it okay if I say that government will simply outsource it to another company? Possible. Think of it. Right? Government will simply outsource it to somebody else. Right? It's possible, by the way. I understand. That is a basic idea for HAM model. Okay. Okay. Let me start with the next one. Infrastructure. Okay. Idea of infrastructure. Now, under this, what infrastructure will be discussing? We'll be discussing power, railways, roads, ports and airports. Right? We'll be discussing a lot of current affairs. Before I start, here is a very important point. Do not search for these in any book. Books do not cover it. Even if they cover it, most of it is useless. Right? I'll tell you why. If you open any book and start reading about, let's say, roads, what do you think the book will tell you? They will tell you how many highways are there in India. How many highways will run east to west? How many highways will run north to south? Right? Which is the longest highway in India? Etc., etc., etc. But UPSC doesn't test you in that. Trust me when I say this. UPSC doesn't test you in that. Maybe if you're writing a bank exam, a state exam, or any other exam, they will ask you, right, which is the longest highway in India, right, which highway has a green color pillar like this, right, etc., etc. But trust me when I say this, you can check the previous 15 years question papers. UPSC doesn't test you like that. But I'll tell you one point, right? Do not stop reading everything about highways in newspapers. I will give you the context. Do not stop reading everything about highways in the newspapers. Why? Right? A couple of years ago, I hope you remember that. Couple of years ago, certain population in one of the states demanded reservation. Right? They demanded reservation. And in order to enforce their argument, they basically blocked national highways. They blocked railway routes. And that, right, demonstration, or let's say that basically the demand for, right, let's say the reservation was conducted for months together, which led to disruption in the supply chain. And suddenly UPSC asked you, what is the name of that highway? That is, which number is that national highway? Which are the cities that they are connecting? So I hope you understand my argument here. Hundreds of national highways are there in India. Do not by heart all of them. All of them UPSC will not ask you. But something appears in the newspaper has certain importance like this. I would say, please read it. Right? Can I give you a current affairs example? One more. Very recently, there was a discussion about Delhi-Mumbai Expressway. Don't you think that kind of a road infrastructure is relevant in both prelims as well as mains? Think of it. That kind of an infrastructure, is it not relevant in prelims as well as mains? Of course, the answer is yes. And suddenly UPSC can ask you, in this Delhi-Mumbai expressway, the highest length of this expressway will fall in which state? I hope you understand. Highest length of this expressway will fall in which state? One kind of a question. Second kind of question, Delhi-Mumbai expressway will cross which of the following states? Right? So again, I hope you understand. When I say don't read the books, I'm not simply asking you to stop reading about roads. That is not my intention. If something is there in the newspaper regarding national highways, expressways like this, right, more than 100% probability that they will pick up those questions. Rather than asking you, state of, let's say, Gujarat has how many highways? You don't have to remember that. The total number of highways in India are a dash. No way required for civil services. Okay, now come back to this. What are the infrastructure types we'll be discussing? All of them are important. I'll discuss a lot of current affairs. Please be very careful. Power, railways, roads, ports, and airports. Let me start now. Power sector. Before that, does anybody have a doubt why we require infrastructure? Let me check. Right? Before starting only, let me check with all of you. Is there anybody who says, sir, why we require infrastructure? Fifth weekend in economics. Right? By the way, fifth weekend in economics. Right? Anybody who says, sir, even today I have no clarity why we actually need roads. Why we actually require electricity? Why? I have no idea why. Please do let me know. So first I'll start with the power sector here. What are the important points? Power sector, please understand this. Generally, the supply chain in the power sector consists of three activities. There are three activities in the whole supply chain. One is called as generation. Second one is transmission, and the third one is distribution. Okay, simple. Generation means production of electricity. And who produces electricity in India? The production of electricity is done by central government. It is done by states. It is also done by private sector. Simple. It is also done by private sector companies. In fact, in case of India, around 40% of the total electricity produced comes from, right, the private sector itself. Now, once the electricity is produced, you are sitting in the home, I am sitting in the office or standing in the office, right? Your parents are watching movie, you are, right, looking at what movie is happening, etc., etc. You should get the electricity, right? You should be supplied with electricity, but the production has happened somewhere, right? So what do? There are two more activities. Electricity will be transported, right? Rather than using the term transportation, we use the term transmission, right? There are private sector companies which are involved in the transmission. Even Government of India owned entity such as a power grid also is involved in the transmission of electricity. But please understand this, transmission will be, right, that is a transportation of electricity from, right, the producer to the distributor will be done, right? Who is the distributor here? You must have heard of, right, various distribution companies. In short, these are called as DISCOMs. Delhi DISCOM, Agra there is a DISCOM, right? In Gujarat there is a DISCOM, right? In Karnataka there is a DISCOM, right? So understand the logic here. First, production will happen, then the electricity will be transported, now electricity will be distributed. So the third stage will be distribution company, generally referred to as DISCOM. And even when you talk about DISCOM, the DISCOMs are two types. One, we have state-owned DISCOMs, the DISCOMs which are owned by the state government. And in addition to the state government, we also have privately owned DISCOMs. Sir, any example of a privately owned DISCOMs? If you are living in Bombay, earlier Tata Power was the DISCOM in Bombay. Now, right, again, sir, Bombay, Mumbai, okay, right? So in Mumbai, Tata Power was the DISCOM, distribution company there. But couple of years ago, we have given or taken away the power from the Tata DISCOM, Tata Power, and we have given it now to Reliance Power. So it is a Reliance Power which is actually distributing the electricity in Mumbai now, right? So there are three stages, simple. One is production, second one is transportation, and the third one is distribution. Now it has been given to Adani. Done, right? Even Adani Power is also there. There are so many private sector companies. Don't worry. Private sector companies are involved in distribution. So first is generation, second one is a transmission, third one is distribution of electricity. Now please understand this. Distribution companies in short are referred to as DISCOMs. The companies which are there in the generation of electricity are referred to as GENCOs. Very often in the newspaper, you can check it later. The newspaper articles will never refer to them as completely generation companies. They'll simply use a short form GENCO, and here they will use a short form DISCOM. And this is basically the supply chain of electricity in India. Now, having said so, what about the fuel here? If you look at the fuel means input. What is the input that we use to produce electricity? We have electricity production in case of India through thermal and gas. Generally around 60% of the total electricity produced in India comes through thermal. But apart from thermal, we also have, right, the renewable energy products or renewable energy segment, right? Renewable energy. Right? What is the idea for renewable energy? Simple. Solar energy, wind energy, small hydro projects, and biomass projects. So we also have a certain amount of contribution coming from renewable. Apart from renewable, we also have nuclear. That is, we are using nuclear material, right, basically to generate electricity. That is, nuclear reactors are used to generate and supply electricity, right? So we have thermal and gas, we have renewable, we have nuclear, we also have large hydroelectric projects. So these are generally the sources through which we generate electricity and supply electricity. But out of this, majority of the electricity comes from thermal sources. Remember this, majority of it comes from thermal and gas, that generally around 60%. Okay, so these are certain important static factual information related to power sector. Now, what are the concerns in the power sector? Right? What are the problem areas in the power sector? Let's go one by one, understand all of them clearly. You should be having knowledge regarding all of this. First one, in the power sector, the distribution companies are suffering because of high aggregate technical and commercial losses. I'll use a short form here, AT&C. High aggregate technical and commercial losses. Now, what is this idea of a technical and commercial losses? For example, imagine electricity is supplied. People will basically use wires to basically draw the electricity. For example, this is electricity theft. Of course, I'm talking about electricity theft. For example, in certain regions you must have seen, right, especially villages, if there's an electricity wire which is passing above the house, right, they will basically throw two hooks like this, two wires, and draw the electricity directly into home. Right? Have you seen this or not? Right? If you have not seen that, then basically it means you have not gone outside your home. Do me a favor. After the class is over, just type electricity theft in India. They will show you very nice pictures in Google. Right? So one is theft of electricity. A lot of electricity theft takes place. Second one is whenever electricity is supplied from one region to another region, some of the electricity is lost because it is transformed into heat. Is it okay? Right? Some of the electricity is lost. Some of the energy is lost because of right, transformation or conversion into heat. Right? I'll give you one more example. In many of the state governments, whenever the government will basically announce that we are going to provide electricity free of a cost, that is also a problem for the distribution company. Why? Follow this carefully. Here is a distribution company. The distribution company will supply electricity, let's say, to irrigation pump. There is an irrigation pump in the agriculture sector. The distribution company has supplied electricity. And what does the state government say? State government says the electricity that is supplied to agriculture sector, it will be free of cost. It will be free of cost. What is the meaning of this? Whenever government says it is free of a cost, it simply means the farmer doesn't have to pay for this electricity. It is the state government which will bear the burden of this electricity. Simple. The farmer doesn't have to pay. The distribution company doesn't have to collect the bill from the farmer. The distribution company will collect the bill from the state government. Now have a look at this. How many of you think that state government will promptly keep on making the payment to distribution company? Promptly in the sense, every month you will get electricity bill. Every month. And if you do not pay the electricity bill, they will impose penalties on you. One fine day they will come to your home, take away, right, the basic instrument that is required to supply, or they'll cut the electricity connection. But when you supply the electricity to agriculture sector, and not just the agriculture sector, state government offices are there. Many agencies which are owned by the state government, they will also draw electricity. And right, it has been found, again, this is not a story, this is a fact. It has been found that whenever such payments are supposed to be done, there is always a delay. There is always a delay that is done by the government. Right? Now, logic is what? Sir, if it is a delay, what is the problem? Problem is simply this. Imagine this. You supplied certain raw material to me. I'm supposed to make you the payment after 10 days. Now, rather than making a payment after 10 days, what if I take 100 days? Which means that amount that you wanted to collect from me is not there with you for 90 days. Extra 90 days, that amount is not there with you, but you require money. Don't you think to pay for something else, you will borrow because of that in the market? You'll have to pay interest on this, etc., etc. Right? That is a precise reason. That is a precise reason. Lot of technical and commercial losses, lot of these losses will lead to higher financial pressure on the state discoms. Now there's a question, aren't majority of the discoms owned by the state government? Yes, they are owned by the state government, but do you think chief minister is equal to discom? Do you think government offices is equal to discom? Don't you think there is a separation of activities between both of them? I hope you understand. Don't you think there is a separation of activities between both of them? There should be separation, by the way. Right? What is the finance of a discom? Government cannot say it is my finance. Right? I hope you understand at least now. Right? The finance of a discom, if a discom has earned money, government cannot take it and start spending money for somewhere else. Then what will the distribution companies do for its own infrastructure? So that is the reason. Right? Owned by the state government, that doesn't mean that finances of the government are equal to finances of the discom. Absolutely no. Generally, we observe there is a separation. Okay? Now, right, so high aggregate technical and commercial losses. Next one, there is a lot of distress in the distribution companies. Lot of distress in the distribution companies. What do you mean by the distress in the distribution companies? Let's go one by one. The average cost of supply in case of India. Right? What do you mean by average cost of supply? Right? Understand this. This is as good as purchasing raw material and selling. Right? Don't be confused. Here is a distribution company. It will purchase electricity and it will sell electricity to customers. Point number one. Any difficulty, please do let me know. Are transmission operated and maintained by the government and private? Yes. In transmission, most of it is done by the government, that is center, but private sector is also there. Right? What about distribution? Most of them are owned by the state, private sector is also there. Right? So come back to this here. Distress in the discoms. How I'm explaining that? Let's go step by step. Step number one. Here is a distribution company. It will purchase electricity and sell the electricity to the consumers. That is you and me. Now, point number two. When the discom will sell electricity, that is supply electricity to you and me, don't you think they would spend money for it? I hope you understand this. If the distribution company participate, most of you have gone dormant now. Right? Most of you have gone dormant, participate, so that I understand that you are understanding. What I'm saying is, a distribution company will purchase electricity and supply electricity to you. Don't you think the distribution company has incurred expenditure for supplying electricity? I will call this as average cost of supply. I'll simply refer to this as average cost of supply. Now, once they supply electricity to you, they will impose charges and collect charges from you. That collection of charges, I'll call this as average revenue realized. Right? Any problem in understanding what is ACS and what is ARR? ACS is for every unit I'm supplying, how much money I'm spending. And for every unit I'm supplying, how much money I'm collecting. Now you tell me, should the ACS be higher or ARR be higher? Right? Think of it. Right? Think of it. Imagine you are a distribution company. What do you think should be higher? ACS or ARR? Right? In simple terms, should the cost of input be higher? Should the cost of output be higher? That is what I'm asking. ARR should be higher. All of you will agree? ARR should be higher. If I spend 4 rupees to supply electricity to you, I should be collecting 5 rupees from you. Right? Thereby making certain profit. But what is the problem in case of India? Exactly reverse. Exactly reverse. In majority of the cases of discoms owned by the state government, this is the problem with the state government owned discoms. I repeat, in majority of the cases of the discoms owned by the state government, the ACS is higher than ARR. If you will ask me, sir, why is that so? State government is involved here. State government will direct the discoms to charge lower amount of money. Simple. That is a precise reason why there is a huge problem in the functioning of distribution companies. Sir, then they will incur losses? Of course, yes. Of course, yes. It is exactly what is happening. As per Government of India, the distribution companies in India have incurred huge amount of losses. One of the reason is this itself, right? A lot of issues in terms of pricing of the electricity. Next one is fuel adequacy problem. Problem of availability of fuel adequacy, right? One, we import a lot of coal from the international market. We import a lot of coal because the coal that we are producing is not qualitative enough and quantity is also not sufficient. So we import coal from rest of the world. Second, what about solar energy? India receives huge number of solar days. Solar days means what? I hope you have seen, right? Where is India located? Right, equator is there. Below that there is 23.5 south, etc., etc. So India receives for majority period of in a year, for majority period of the days, India receives very good sunlight. So the argument is, can we use this sunlight, convert that into solar energy? Of course, yes. That is the precise reason government is promoting solar energy production in India. But if you want to catch the sunlight, convert the sunlight into electricity, you require panel. All of you agree? You require panel. We do not have competitiveness in production of panels. We import a lot of these panels and most of it comes from China. Right? Even in case of solar modules, right, we are import dependent. What about nuclear energy? You require nuclear raw material. We do not have it. We import it. You require nuclear reactors. We import it from countries such as France, countries such as USA, Britain, etc. Right? So this is a problem in regards to the fuel adequacy in India. Next one, problem of cross subsidization. Problem of cross subsidization. Now, what is the idea of a cross subsidization? Right? I've discussed this earlier. Let me repeat it. Whenever you are going to supply a good or a service to different consumers, I repeat, what is the idea of a cross subsidization? Whenever you supply a good or a service to different consumers, for one you will charge more, for others you will charge less. This is called as cross subsidization. Is it okay? I'll repeat it. Whenever you supply the good or service to different consumers in the market, for one set of consumers you will charge more money, for another set of consumers you will charge lesser money. That is called as a cross subsidization. We have discussed the idea of a cross subsidization when I was discussing classification of subsidies. In electricity, if you're a household, you are provided, right, the subsidy, you are provided electricity at very low cost. If you're a company, if you're a commercial entity, same electricity but at a higher cost. Sir, why it is a problem? Right? Why this is an issue? Simple. In the process of having a cross subsidization like this, you are providing free electricity to agriculture sector. You tell me what is the problem because of this? You are providing free electricity to agriculture sector for irrigation purposes. Now, don't you think if you provide free electricity, the farmers will keep on pumping a lot of water? Are they worried about using the water efficiently? No. They will keep on pumping lot of water. As a result of this, what will happen? The underground water level, the water table will start falling down. It will start depleting. That's a very dangerous outcome. Very, very dangerous outcome. I'll give you one more problem with this. Not related to agriculture. Talk about, let's say, electricity for houses. Many state governments provide free electricity for all the houses. Why? What is the logic? I hope you understand, right? Can I give you one example? Delhi government. And again, don't say, sir, you're targeting AAP government. Absolutely no. Right? If you have followed my discussions, there is no targeting. There is no political intentions anywhere. In the same way, there are many other state governments which provide free electricity for agriculture purposes. They are also equally wrong. Now, why I'm talking about Delhi government? The Delhi government announced that for all the houses in the Delhi, certain number of units will be provided free of a cost. I hope you understand. Certain number of electricity units will be provided free of a cost. What is the reason? What is the need in the first place? Delhi has one of the highest per capita incomes. You identify a poor household, provide it to that house. Understandable. Social welfare is one of your objectives. But a city where the per capita incomes are one of the highest in India, why do you want to provide free electricity to everyone? Don't you think that is unfair? That is not promoting equity. Right? So that is a concern here. Right? So cross subsidization is also a problem. It's also a concern. Finally, energy security. What do you mean by energy security? Do we have 24/7 electricity supply? How many of you are going to say yes? Let me see. And by the way, I hope you know we are moving towards summer now. Right? We are moving towards summer. How many of you will say yes, sir? Right? In my place, 24/7 electricity supply is there. Right? Again, just to give you factual, correct information, Government of India itself has stated most of the cities in India, we are able to provide almost 24/7. Almost 24/7. But even today in the villages, it's not 24/7. It is in fact much, much lesser. In some of the states, on an average, rural part of the states get 15 hours of electricity. In some of the states, it is 13 hours per day. In some of the states, it is 18 hours per day. So argument is simple, right? We are yet to reach 24/7 electricity supply in all the parts of India. And please understand, you should have 24/7 electricity supply. You should have it. Why? Electricity supply, right? That is constant, reliable electricity supply will promote industrialization, will promote learning levels. In majority of the studies, electricity is connected to learning capability of the students, or let's say children in a rural part of India. That is the reason we need to have or we need to ensure that there is 24/7 electricity supply. In simple terms, electricity security or energy security. Okay? Right? So basically, these are some of the issues, some of the problems in the electricity sector. Now, what reforms have been taken? Right? What reforms have been undertaken by the government? Let's go one by one. First one, Government of India earlier implemented a scheme by the name of Ujjwal Discom Assurance Yojana. Is it still under implementation? No. Right? Have a look at this. The deadline of the scheme was financial year 20. It is over, and Government of India has already withdrawn this scheme. It is not there in the implementation. Now, why it is required? Because I want to migrate to one more scheme, RDSS. Right now, we are implementing this revamped distribution sector scheme. Now, what was the proposal under Uday scheme? Ujjwal Discom Assurance Yojana. Because there was one question earlier when I was discussing, I said the average cost of supply is greater than average revenue realized. And I said, as a result of this, large number of distribution companies in India have incurred losses. Right? Two of you have basically asked me, sir, if that is so, how they are able to continue operating? They borrow a lot of money from the banking sector. They take loans. Right? It is there. They also get the assistance from the central government because there is a scheme. They will also get the assistance from the states. But argument is this is not sustainable. I hope you understand this. This model is not sustainable. The distribution companies should not be dependent for money from anybody else. They should be self-sustainable. Or to borrow the term of Government of India, they should be Atmanirbhar. Right? They should be Atmanirbhar. They should not be dependent on the center state like this. So what did Government of India do? They implemented a scheme earlier, Ujjwal Discom Assurance Yojana, Uday scheme, Ujjwal Discom Assurance Yojana. What is ACS and ARR? My dear, ACS and ARR. Right? The short terms are there. Discussion is done. Hardly 20 minutes. Okay. So what was the proposal here? One, the discoms have lot of loans. They have borrowed money. Let's say they have taken a loan from a bank. Under the Ujjwal Discom Assurance Yojana, the state government will simply repay the loan on behalf of discoms. Is it okay? Right, I'll repeat it. Right, the distribution companies have taken lot of loans from the banks. And because now they are incurring losses, they are unable to repay the loan. And we cannot continue to allow this to happen now. So what we will do? We will ask the state government to repay these loans so that the discoms do not repay the loan. Right? The burden on the repayment or burden of repayment on distribution companies will automatically go down. Point number one. Point number two. It doesn't mean that there is nothing or no condition on the discom. We are not doing any favor to the discom. It's just that the state government will repay the loan, but now we will impose conditions on discoms. We will give them certain targets to achieve. One, they will have to reduce the gap between ARR and ACS. They'll have to reduce the gap. Reduce the gap means what? ACS is higher than ARR. Right? Start revising the revenues upwards. Right? Collect more and more revenues. The gap should come down. And second, your aggregate technical and commercial losses are very high. Even today, they are around 20%. Right? At one point of time, they were more than 25%. Your AT&C losses are higher. Reduce your AT&C losses. So targets were given under the Ujjwal Discom Assurance Yojana. Was it successful? Did the discoms meet these targets? Absolutely no. Right? Absolutely no. Right? Why? Targets were given, but the conditions, the assistance that the center provided or the state provided, assistance was not connected to the targets. I hope you understand this. For example, right, sir, what do you mean by this? I'll give a very simple example. Understand this. What if I say government will give you subsidy? Government will give you subsidy. But to get that subsidy, you will have to read economics for 8 hours. I hope you understand this. To get that subsidy, again, there is no subsidy like that. I just want you to understand the meaning here. Right? Government is giving you subsidy, assistance is given. But what if government will connect that subsidy to the number of hours that you're supposed to read? So government, right, what if this condition was not there? Government says you read 8 hours, I will give you 500 rupees every day. Right? Tell me how many of you will actually read economics for 8 hours? Most of you will simply say, yes sir, I'll read. You give me 500. I'll keep on reading, don't worry. Right now, see, I'm holding economics book only. Give me 500. Right? So the argument is, again, don't write this in exam. Argument is, targets were given, But Government of India did not basically make it conditional. The assistance was not made conditional upon meeting targets. And that is the precise reason the Ujjwal Discom Assurance Yojana was not successful. Now, what has the Government of India done? They have introduced one more scheme. Basically, they have restructured. The Ujjwal Discom Assurance Yojana. Look at the name of the scheme. Revamped Distribution Sector Scheme. RDSS. Revamped Distribution Sector Scheme. Now you'll be looking at it, and that's the reason whenever you read anything in the books or newspaper, think of it. Be circumspect. Right? For example, have a look at this. Under RDSS, the government has told the discoms, you will have to reduce your AT&C losses, right, to around 12 to 15%. You will also have to reduce the gap between ACS and ARR to zero. That is, at least ensure that whatever money you are spending to supply electricity, it is the same amount of money that you are collecting. At least ensure that. So the gap between ACS and ARR should be zero. And target years have been provided. Now you will ask me, sir, how it is different from earlier situation? How is it different from earlier situation? Earlier also targets were given. Now government says, whatever assistance I'm providing under RDSS, look at the beauty of the scheme. Whatever assistance I'm providing to you under RDSS, there are conditions. What are the conditions? I want you to reduce the gap between ACS and ARR to 0 by 24-25. I want you to reduce your AT&C losses in the range of 12 to 15%, bring it down in the range of 12 to 15% by 24 and 25. Now tell me, how much will you reduce in the next 1 year? I hope you understand. How much will you reduce in the financial year 23? Give me the target. How much will you reduce in the financial year 24? Give me the target. How much will you reduce in the financial year 25? Give me the yearly target. So point number one, yearly targets should be given by the state governments to the government. Point number one. Second point, just because you have given the target, they will not give you assistance. Imagine they have given you assistance, but you are not able to meet the target. Next year, they will stop the assistance. Is it okay? The next year, because I've given you assistance, you are not able to meet the target, I will stop giving you assistance. Right? That is the beauty of Revamped Distribution Sector Scheme, RDSS. The target year for the implementation of this scheme is 25 and 26, and many other schemes which were implemented by the government earlier, integrated power distribution scheme, or Deen Dayal Upadhyaya Grama Jyoti Yojana, etc. Most of the other schemes now has been become or have been made part of RDSS itself. We do not have individual schemes now. All of them are part of RDSS. Done. Next one, Ujala scheme, right? That is Unnata Jyoti by affordable LEDs for all. LED program, please understand this, right? Government of India has implemented National LED program. National LED program, right? And there are two components to National LED program here. There are two components. What are the two components? One, we will be replacing all the street lights. We have street lights. Anybody who says, sir, what is a street light? Right? Whatever lights you will see on the street, it is called as a street light. So there are street lights. We'll simply replace all the street lights, ensure that all of them are LED bulbs. Simple. In all the street lights that we're using, we will ensure that they will be LED bulbs. Second component is basically the households. Basically the households, that is houses. Even in the houses, we want all the houses to start using LED bulbs. Simple. In offices also, they are replacing with LED bulbs. In commercial enterprises also, they are recommending use LED bulbs. What is LED? Light emitting diode, right? Light emitting diode. And what is the advantage of LED? Simple. Whenever you consume electricity using LED, these are much more efficient. Is it okay? These are much more efficient. And because, right, these are much more efficient compared to incandescent bulbs, the earlier bulbs. It is said that the electricity bills would become lower. And because you are consuming lesser electricity, because the bulbs are much more efficient, the demand for the electricity automatically is expected to go down. Right? That is the precise reason Government of India is implementing these kinds of initiatives for promotion of consumption of LED bulbs. And for the implementation of this scheme, please remember there is an SPV, special purpose vehicle. For the implementation of Ujala scheme, there is a special purpose vehicle. That is, there is a one authority, and this authority is Energy Efficiency Services Limited, right? EESL. And so far, more than 36 crore LED bulbs have been distributed. Again, do not by heart this number, because I'm pretty sure today itself the number would have been much higher. This is very old data. And by the time you write the exam, this number will be much higher than 36. Do not by heart it. Then this is one more initiative of the government. Next one, PM Saubhagya scheme. PM Saubhagya scheme. What is this PM Saubhagya? Pradhan Mantri, right, Sahaj Bijli Har Ghar Yojana. Pradhan Mantri or Prime Minister Sahaj Bijli Har Ghar Yojana. PM Saubhagya scheme. Now under PM Saubhagya scheme, Government of India says free electricity connection. Understand this. Free electricity connection. Connection will be provided free of a cost. So what do you mean by connection here? How many of you know that whenever you want to get an electricity connection, you will have to pay certain charges to distribution company? Right? If you don't know, please ask your parents, they will tell you. Right? You are supposed to submit documents, you are supposed to pay certain charges, and then they will come, they will draw the electricity line or electricity wire from the pillar to your home. Now what Government of India says is, there are certain houses which do not have electricity connection. Right? So government says, whatever charges they are supposed to incur for that, we will simply waive it off. We will not collect it from them. So we will provide the connection free of a cost. Right? So have a look at this. The electricity connection is free of a cost, but for electricity you will have to pay money. Please do not be confused here. Right? If that was a situation, everybody will take their, right, let's say TVs, mobile phones, laptops to that house only. Right? So the electricity connection is provided free of a cost, but for whatever electricity you consume, then you will have to pay charges. Right? In fact, under this, imagine there is a house, it has not been identified as a beneficiary. Government says, I will provide electricity connection to you, but I will charge and collect the money later from you. Right? So PM Saubhagya initiative, the Government of India wants to ensure that all the houses are connected with electricity connection. All the houses are electrified. Right? And the nodal agency means the authority. Right? The authority that has been given the responsibility under this scheme is Rural Electrification Corporation. Rural Electrification Corporation, REC. REC is the nodal authority. In fact, if you remember earlier, I believe yesterday itself, when I was discussing disinvestment, many of you are asking, sir, why does the government go for cross-holding? Do you remember the idea for cross-holding? And Rural Electrification Corporation was the example that I gave you under cross-holding. I told you that generally government would want to achieve certain objective, they would want to achieve certain goals, and if they privatize this company, they will not be able to achieve all of them, and that is the precise reason government will go for cross-holding structures. In fact, under cross-holding, what is the point that I've mentioned in the slide? Power Finance Corporation now is the owner, has purchased Rural Electrification Corporation, REC. Done? Right, so PM Saubhagya initiative, one more initiative in the electricity sector. And finally, government is promoting renewable energy. Huge amount of promotion for renewable energy. For example, I've given in the slide here, 175 gigawatts of renewable energy capacity was the target by 2022. If you ask me, sir, have we achieved it? Answer is no. Right now, the amount of renewable energy capacity we have in India is more than 100 gigawatts. Definitely, yes, more than 100 gigawatts. But no, we have not been able to achieve this target. But even this target is outdated now. Why? Government of India has already restructured the target. We want to have a 500 gigawatts of capacity by 2030. Is it okay? We want to have a 500 gigawatts of capacity by 2030. Right, so that is basically the thirst that the government is promoting to renewable energy. That is, government is promoting solar energy. Right, government is promoting, right, the wind energy projects. Right, solar park scheme is there. Solar rooftop scheme is there. How many of you have attended the last week's webinar? Let me check. How many of you attended the last week's, that is last Thursday itself, Thursday's webinar? I took the webinar. That's the reason I'm asking you. Because in that webinar, I discussed all the other reforms, many other reforms, right? And the discussion was basically focused on renewable energy. Solar park scheme is there. Solar city scheme is there now. Solar rooftop scheme is there. Right, so there are so many initiatives of the government of India. Please be very, very careful. Right, UPSC can ask you questions on all of them. Done? Right, so these are some of the steps which have been taken by the government, okay, which are taken by the government to promote the electricity sector, or right, the stability in the electricity sector. Repeat once again, REC. I said Rural Electrification Corporation has been sold by the government. Rural Electrification Corporation has been sold by the government to another agency which is again owned by the government. That is Power Finance Corporation, PFC, Power Finance Corporation. Done? Okay. Next component in the infrastructure that I want to discuss is idea of railways. Concept of railways. Now, first and foremost, right, again understand the logic here. Railways, it's what are the important points? Static points here, right? Let me check. Okay, Indian Railways is a departmental undertaking. Okay, Indian Railways is a departmental undertaking. Or before that, I'll come back to this. Don't worry, sir. What is the special purpose vehicle? Right? Let me give a very basic idea here. Again, I'll connect it to railways. Let me give a very basic idea. Generally, whenever you talk about SPV, special purpose vehicle, in the context of infrastructure like this, what is the meaning of it? It is a dedicated authority. Simple. It is a dedicated authority. What do you mean by dedicated authority? Government of India, right, or for that matter, even the state, whoever is setting up this authority has given specific work to it. I hope you understand this. Anybody who is going to set up a special purpose vehicle, what is the use of the special purpose vehicle? A project has to be launched, and the duty of the special purpose vehicle is to ensure implementation of it. I'll give you examples. Follow this carefully. Some time ago, we discussed NIMZ, National Investment Manufacturing Zone. Did I say that Government of India has proposed SPV for this? Because right now, there is no authority which will promote the development of NIMZ. There is no authority which will manage NIMZs in India. But these are industrial towns. So what should we do? We should set up one authority whose duty is simply to manage NIMC. One example. Second example, we are implementing Ujala scheme. We are implementing Ujala scheme, LED program. For that, we have set up one authority, and that dedicated authority for implementation of Ujala is basically Energy Efficiency Services Limited, EESL. I'll give you third example. We are in the process of implementing bullet train. Done. We are in the process of implementing bullet train in India. And even for the implementation of bullet train project, there is a special purpose vehicle which has been set up by Government of India. Let me check how much you know. What is the name of this authority? Start answering. Last 20 minutes are there. Don't worry, we will wind up after 20 minutes. Don't worry. Tell me, what is the name of the special purpose vehicle which has been set up by the government for the implementation of this project, that is bullet train project? Only 2 people have answered. Only 2 people. Rest of them, sir, done. We are done for the day. We are so much tired, I can't even lift my fingers and type. You tell, I'll say whether it is correct or not. National High Speed Rail Corporation. National High Speed Rail Corporation. What is the duty? What is the function of National High Speed Rail Corporation? Simple. Implement bullet train project. That's it. Implement bullet train project. So now is the logic okay? What do you mean by special purpose vehicle? It is a dedicated authority. And the role of this special purpose vehicle is defined by the authority, or let's say the agency or the government who is establishing it. So let me get back to the railways then. What are the important static portion points regarding railways? 1. Indian Railways is a departmental undertaking. What do you mean by departmental undertaking? Within Government of India, there is one division, that is one department, one ministry, which will take care of functioning of railways in India. It is this ministry which will decide how many railways will be there in India, how many routes will be operated, what will be the tariff imposed and collected from the customer, etc., etc., etc. Everything is decided by the railways itself. That is Ministry of Railways. Point number 1. Point number 2, India has one of the largest railway ecosystems in the global market. Railway systems in the global market. What do you mean by railway systems? The number of railways operated, the number of passengers for which we provide the services, the number of routes which are there. India is one of the largest in the international market. Generally ahead of India, better than India, the railway system is present in USA, Russia and China. These are generally the countries which have a better railway system compared to India. India is also in the top 4 to 5 like this. Now within the railways, there are 2 segments. In the railways, there are 2 segments. One is called as a passenger segment. Segment means part, classification. In the railways, we provide services for transportation of the passengers and transportation of the freight. Freight simply means goods here. Again, goods is a very, very narrow term. Raw material. For example, coal. Coal is not a good, by the way. Coal is something that is used as an input. But railways, we use railways for transportation of coal in India. We use railways to transport crude oil in India. We use railways to transport goods also, to transport vehicles from one region to another region, etc., etc. So one is a freight transportation, another one is passenger transportation. Now, what are the issues? What are the problems in the railway segment? Let's go one by one. If you look at the situation of railways and roadways, please understand this. We can use different modes for transportation. Mode means different variations. We can use transportation through railways. We can transport through roadways. We can transport through civil aviation, that is air transport. And finally, we can also use waterways. We can also use waterways. Right? We'll discuss waterways next week. Don't worry. Saturday. We'll discuss waterways Saturday. And that's the last day for you, by the way, for Indian economy. We'll complete. Don't worry. So understand this. There are different ways through which you can transport people, you can transport goods, etc. If you look at it, after independence, immediately after independence, most of the transportation in case of India happened through railways. Simple. Most of the transportation happened through railways. But over a period of time, at 1960, 1970, 1980, 1990, now we are in 2023. If you look at it today, most of the transportation in India happens through roadways. Right? It doesn't happen through railways, it happens through roadways. Sir, how much do we generally have through railways today? Generally around 30%. From 1 year to next year, the data will vary, or I will quote the data of Government of India. Government of India in 2020 proposed a plan. We'll discuss that plan next week. So in 2020, Government of India proposed a plan for railways. And in that particular plan document, Government of India itself says, as of today, around 20% of the transportation in India is done through railways. Around 27%. Right? What about more than 50 to 60%? It is done through roadways. And this is a problem, by the way. This is a problem. Why? Right? Look at it very carefully. When you transport through railways and roadways, the cost of transportation through roadways is comparatively higher. Simple. Cost of transportation through roadways, it is higher. Point number one. And how much emission that can be caused because of the roadways, the emission cost is also higher. So when you compare between, let's say, railways and roadways, which is a better mode of transportation, which is better between both of them, you'll have to come to a conclusion, sir, it is railways. Right? It is railways that is a better mode of a transportation. But now the question arises, if it is so, if it is that railways is better than roadways, then why are we using roadways? Why are we not using railways then more and more? These are the reasons. These are the reasons. One, have a look at this very carefully. Whenever you want to transport through railways, you will have to deal with government officials. I don't know how many of you have used railways for transportation. I've used it. And I'll tell you my personal experience. Dealing with railway officials is never easy. Right? You tell me your experience. Right? Dealing with these railway officials is never easy. Right? I'll give you two examples. Imagine you want to transport a good from place A to place B. You want to transport from place A to place B. You want to put it, let's say, through a transport agency, that is a truck agency. They will come to your home. No documentation required. They'll come to your home. They will only bring labor. They will pick up the goods. They will load it into the truck and they'll take it. Now, do the same thing with railways. Try the same thing with railways. First, they will say, bring the goods to railway station. Right? Bring the goods. I'm here. I'm sitting in the railway station. You bring it here. Second, you want to move these goods in the railways. Give me documents. Right? Give me a lot of documents. And many other times, give me bribe also. Don't write that in the exam. Right? Give me all these documents. Now, right, the railway will come. Right? That is, the rail will come. Right? The labor you will have to use, load them into the train. And many of the times you must have seen how they easily, right, they will pick up the goods like this, they will throw it. Right, so they will basically, right, load them into the railways, that is wagons. It will reach one station. They will again, right, take them out of the railway, that is wagon, that is railway coach, keep it on the side. You will have to send someone there. Again, they will have to go to railway authorities, show the document, receive the goods, put them into the truck, and now take it to warehouse. Right, I hope you understand. Should you write all the story in the exam? Absolutely no. All I'm trying to convey is transporting through roads is much easier compared to transporting through railways. Right, so one, understand this. Roadways account for majority of the freight transportation in India. The number of competitors in the roadways is very high. And for example, you want to move from one city to another city, you will get n number of calls from packers and movers. Right, you just search in Google. Right, now the Google will sell you a data to the packer and mover. Now continuously the packer and mover will keep on calling you. Sir, do you need services? Sir, madam, I'll provide discount to you. I'll take care of your products when you're moving, etc., etc., etc. Right, so the number of competitors in the road segment is very high. Railways, it's a monopoly. Monopoly in the sense only government is there. Whatever the government officials have to have basically required from you, you'll have to provide it. That's it. Right, so competition in case of roadways is very high. Number of handling points. Handling points means what? I told you, first you will have to take the goods to railway station. Now they will load into the railway coach. Now they will again unload it or basically remove them, put on the platform in the destination station. Now you'll have to go to the station, right, again move them. So because you are loading, unloading, loading, unloading, the chances of products getting damaged will be very high. Chances of theft will be very, very high. Okay, damages or theft can take place. And finally, dealing with government officials, right, this is the biggest problem. Dealing with government officials is very, very difficult. Right, so because of these reasons, over a period of time, what has happened? The transportation done through railways, especially goods transportation done through railways, has come down, and goods transportation done through roadways has increased. But that is problematic because cost of transportation is higher, right? The pollution that is caused is higher. And if the cost of transportation is higher, you tell me, don't you think your export competitiveness will automatically come down? Right, so these are some of the concerns regarding, right, usage of more and more road mode of a transportation compared to railways mode of a transportation. Okay, next, I'll discuss the last point here. Last point, second and third, we'll take it up next Saturday. Don't worry. High operating ratio. Right, what do you mean by high operating ratio? Simple. It is basically a ratio of how much expenses you are incurring to generate certain amount of income. And what is operating ratio? How much expenses you are incurring to generate certain amount of income. For example, you tell me now, last 5 minutes are there, participate now. At least now participate. If I tell you that operating ratio is 95, right? Is it okay if I say that it means to earn income of 100, you're spending 95 rupees? Let me know. If I say that operating ratio is 95, it simply means you're spending 95 rupees to earn 100 rupees. Now tell me, somebody says no. Two people are saying no. Really difficult. Okay, you're talking about that. Okay, so I hope, sorry, one person is saying no. My dear, operating ratio is what? It is the ratio of expenditure to income. Ratio of expenditure to income. And if I say operating ratio is 95, you're spending 95 rupees to earn income of 100 rupees. That is the basic idea of operating ratio. Now, last question to all of you. if operating ratio increases from 95 rupees to 98 rupees, is it good or bad? Last question. Right, answer this, then I'll take questions from your side. We'll conclude today's discussion. Right, so operating ratio today is 95. If it increases to 98 rupees, is it good? No, it is bad. Right, why? Sir, why it is bad? It simply means now to generate income of 100 rupees, you are spending 98 rupees. How is that efficient? How is that efficient? Right, don't you think efficiency is coming down? Expenses are increasing, incomes are not changing. Right, so that is the reason higher operating ratio is always problem. And in case of India's railways, operating ratio has been around 97 to 98. Right, in fact last year the operating ratio went up to 98.4. 98.4, highest in the last 10 years. What does it mean? They are incurring more amount of money now. The efficiency is not there. Expenses incurred are higher to generate revenues. Right, so high operating ratio is also a problem. We should be able to reduce it. Done. So first issue is done, fourth issue is done, second and third is left out. We'll take it up next week, don't worry. Now you have any kind of a doubt, you have any kind of issues regarding what I've discussed so far, please do let me know. If you say no issues sir, everything is fully clear, then we'll stop the discussion. Any difficulties, any issues, any doubts? What is SCB? State Electricity Board. SCB stands for State Electricity Board. These are nothing but the DISCOMs owned by the state government. Any other issue? Any other problem? No doubts. Alright, then I should have continued the discussion. I could have covered one more point now. Okay. Nobody has a doubt. After the whole economics is over, you will start having doubt. Repeat VGF, viability gap funding. What is viability gap funding? I'll repeat it, understand this. Certain projects, right, these are required economically. For example, construction of national highways, construction of manufacturing facility, etc., etc., etc. So we need to have development of these infrastructure projects, which means these projects are economically, right, economically justified. But the problem is, if I ask the private sector to construct it, right, spend money, develop the infrastructure, private sector says, I'm concerned about the financial viability of the project. What do you mean by financial viability? If you're going to spend 100 crore rupees, how much revenue are you going to generate? Will you be able to recover your revenues or not? Etc., etc., etc. You are worried about returns or the capability of earning returns from the project. In such cases, right, in such cases, what generally happens is private sector will stay away, right? They will stay away from projects. But don't you think as government you should promote development of such projects? So what government says is, part of the project cost, certain percentage of the project cost, I will provide it. I will fund it, not loan. Please understand, it's not loan, it's fund. I will provide funding to the developer. And that's the reason I said for PPP there is a scheme, VGF scheme. Under that, we have divided all the projects into two types. Those that will fall in the sub-scheme 1, right, will get certain amount of, right, let's say, assistance from the government up to 60%. And there is another set of schemes, that is sub-scheme 2. They will get up to 80% of the capital expenditure that they have incurred in a project in the form of grants. That is a concept of viability gap funding. Okay. Ujala, other name is National LED Program. As far as I know, National LED Program is a bigger component. Under that, for houses, we are trying to replace LED households. In VGF, these are loans. No, I told you, right? In VGF, it's a fund. It's a fund, money, right? One-sided flow, right? Why will they take loan from you? Imagine you're the government, I'm a private sector. Why will I take a loan from you? I will take from a bank only. If I could take from a bank, already there is a concern that what about my revenues, right? So I hope you understand this. It's not loan, it's a fund. Done? Okay. Right, let's stop the discussion then. Let's stop the discussion here today. We'll continue with the issues in the railways. After this, we'll take up roadways, right? We'll take up airport, that is civil aviation market. That is basically the coverage of infrastructure. And after that, we'll be left out with employment, inclusive growth, and finally IMF. And that will be the complete coverage of GS paper 3, that is Indian economy part for you. So next week, Saturday, we'll start from here. We'll discuss this. Certain questions are there. We will cover those questions as well. And that will be the end of the discussion for Indian economy for you. Okay, that's it then. So poverty will be discussed in social issues. Right, different topics will be covered in different subjects. Don't worry. Okay, done. So take care. See you again next time. Right, next week, that is Saturday. Right, we'll meet again Saturday 12 p.m. Take care. Good night. Right, have a great week ahead.